Have you ever found yourself backed into a corner, badly wounded and dangerously low on spell slots? Your sorcerer pulls out one last spell and suddenly the tide turns. The enemies that were about to overwhelm you are frozen in place. 1 second, you're bracing for hitting the reload button, and the next, your party cuts them down like it's a slaughterer's festival. That's the power of control spells in Baldurs Gate 3. Today, we are taking a closer look at 3 iconic spells: Holdperson, Hypnotic Pattern and Confusion. These are staples in many caster's builds, and in the next few minutes you will learn how to use them effectively, when to pick which, and how they synergize with different playstyles. If you enjoyed tactical analysis and deep dives like this, consider liking the video and subscribing for more content. All 3 of these spells, Holdperson, Hypnotic Pattern and Confusion, are concentration-based spells that require your targets to make a wisdom saving throw. Holdperson is a 2nd level enchantment spell that targets a single humanoid enemy, completely paralyzing them if they fail their save. When you upcast it, you can affect 1 additional enemy for each spell slot level above 2. A paralyzed enemy can't move, act or react at all. And as an extra bonus, any attack you make from within 3 meters against a paralyzed target automatically becomes a critical hit. The downside, it only affects humanoid enemies, so it won't help you against beasts, monstrosities or other creatures you will regularly encounter. The spell can theoretically last up to 10 turns, but affected enemies have a chance to break free by repeating their saving throw each turn. You will unlock Holdperson at level 3 if you are playing a bard, cleric, druid, warlock, wizard or Circle of the Land druid specializing in the Arctic or forest regions. Additionally, Oath of Vengeance paladins get it at level 5, arcane tricksters rogues at level 7 and eldritch knights at level 8. If you're lucky, you can also find this spell on the Dagger Stillmaker. Hypnotic Pattern is a powerful 3rd level illusion spell covering a massive 9 meter radius. You can cast it even while silenced. It incapacitates enemies, stopping them from taking any actions, movements or reactions, essentially putting them in a trance. However, the spell ends for an affected enemy immediately if they are damaged or after the 2-turn duration expires. Another catch, it doesn't distinguish friend from foe. While you can't hypnotize yourself, your allies aren't immune from friendly fire, so careful placement is crucial. Hypnotic Pattern doesn't give targets additional saving throws after the initial one, making it reliably powerful once it lands. It becomes available at level 5 for bards, sorcerers, warlocks, wizards and desert region land druids. Confusion is a 4th level enchantment spell, creating chaos within a 6 meter radius. If cast with a higher level slot, the spell's area increases by 2 meters for each level above 4. Enemies who fail their wisdom save gain the Confused status, lasting for 3 turns. The confused enemies either fall into a stupor, unable to take any action, or lash out, attacking a random nearby target, which could include their own allies. Like Holdperson, enemies affected by Confusion can repeat their saving throw each turn to break free. You will unlock Confusion at level 7 if you are playing a bard, druid, sorcerer, wizard, knowledge cleric, Circle of Spores druid or coast region land druid. Additionally, you can cast it once per long rest using the Orphic Ring, and warlocks can access it as an eldritch invocation at level 7. Each of these spells excels at controlling targets, but their effectiveness varies significantly depending on the scenario. The primary selling point of Holdperson is its ability to not only disable an enemy, but it also allows repeated attacks against them. Additionally, as mentioned earlier, it enables automatic critical hits for everyone within melee range. The main strategic function of Holdperson is coordinating your team's damage on priority targets, while at the same time disabling them. The automatic critical hits greatly enhance focused fire potential, maximizing your team's damage output throughout the spell's duration. It's most effective when your team's initiative aligns properly, ensuring your casters remain undisturbed by enemy attacks trying to break their concentration. Of course, you also need to position yourself within melee range to take full advantage of the automatic critical hits. Pairing Holdperson with a Paladin Smite creates an incredibly powerful burst damage combo, resulting in ungodly amounts of unfairness, quickly eliminating threats with devastating effectiveness. A notable limitation of Hypnotic Pattern is that affected enemies immediately break free once they take damage. As a result, this spell is ideally used to buy time by splitting enemy groups or isolating a single target while their companions remain incapacitated. The main strength of Hypnotic Pattern lies in its simplicity, large area of effect, low casting cost, and overall reliability. Its primary function is to break down large encounters into smaller, more manageable segments, making difficult fights significantly easier to handle. Confusion inflicts the confused condition. Targets must first make a saving throw when the spell is cast, and then another at the start of each of their turns. This extra saving throw, required before the effect can take hold, makes Confusion even less consistent than spells like Holdperson when it comes to reliably disabling enemies. When the spell takes hold, two outcomes are possible. First, the target may enter a state of stupor, effectively skipping their turn. This effect is highly reliable in its functionality. I was able to consistently reproduce this behavior across various test setups. Second, alternatively, the target may use their turn to attack a random creature within range. Based on my testing, the outcomes between stupor and random attacks occur at approximately a 50-50 ratio. However, I encountered several inconsistencies with the second outcome, particularly regarding how the spell selects targets for a random attack. Initially, targeting appeared to be evenly distributed among available entities. For example, in a scenario with 2 enemies and 4 party members, the confused enemies would mostly attack party members, likely because the majority of available targets within range were from the player's side. However, when I reversed the setup and placed a single character among 5 enemies, those confused enemies were suddenly more inclined to attack one another. Up to that point, the results seemed expected. Confused creatures appeared to prioritize attacking whatever was closest, or whichever side had more targets in range. But things started getting strange in different scenarios. In other test encounters, regardless of party size or positioning, enemies began exclusively targeting my party members when not in a stupor. I reloaded the same encounter more than a dozen times, and across all tests, despite mass confusing nearly a dozen enemies, only a single instant of friendly fire occurred. The rest relentlessly targeted my group. In contrast to Crown of Madness, where enemies will reliably attack their nearest ally and are treated as hostile by their team, Confusion appears to apply friendly fire inconsistently. It may factor in proximity and number of targets in some fights, but in others, these considerations seem to be ignored entirely. For the sake of clarity in this guide, I will treat the stupor effect, causing a creature to skip its turn, as the core feature of Confusion, with an approximate 50% chance to trigger per turn. Any friendly fire from confused enemies should be seen as a bonus, something you can enjoy when it happens, but not a mechanic to plan around. Now that we have covered how the spell behaves, let's look at its tactical niche. Confusion is one of the few control spells without a fixed target cap. Like Hypnotic Pattern or Glyph of Warding Sleep, it scales purely with area coverage. So with proper enemy grouping, it can affect significantly more targets than spells like Holdperson, Blindness, or even Slow, despite Slow's highest target cap, depending on how spread out the enemies are. Unlike Hypnotic Pattern, however, Confusion does not end when a creature takes damage. This places it in the same category as spells like Holdperson, Blindness, or Slow. Spells that allow you to attack enemies without immediately breaking the control effect. This makes Confusion uniquely suited for large-scale fights with extreme enemy density, where you want to control multiple enemies without losing the option to deal damage over the course of its duration. Because Confusion disables enemies approximately 50% of the time or more under favorable conditions, you will generally want it to affect at least twice as many enemies as the same level Holdperson to match its impact on reducing incoming damage. Of course, these numbers shift depending on whether you are dealing with high priority targets or taking advantage of Holdperson's auto crits on paralyzing foes. In summary, Confusion can only outperform Holdperson when it affects at least twice as many enemies as Holdperson would. At the same time, Confusion can only surpass Hypnotic Pattern if you are planning to follow up with area of effect damage. If your strategy relies on focused single target takedowns, Hypnotic Pattern remains the more reliable choice, completely disabling the rest of the encounter while you pick off enemies one at a time. When discussing control spells, there's an essential concept we must address first: spell save DCs. The basic concept is straightforward. You start with a base value of 8. add your proficiency bonus, then add your casting stat modifier, and finally include any spell save DC bonuses from your equipped items. Enemies will roll a d20, adding their relevant stat modifier and proficiency bonus if applicable. If their result meet or exceeds your DC, they successfully resisted your spell, completely nullifying its effects. This mechanic creates a high-stakes scenario, either fully disabling the enemy or achieving nothing at all. Considering you spent an entire action and potentially a valuable spell slot on this coin toss, the stakes are incredibly high. A failed spell means not only a wasted turn, but also leaving enemies free to act when you expected them to be incapacitated. This situation becomes even more challenging with spells requiring recurring saves, giving enemies a fresh chance to break free each turn. Because of this, having a spell save DC of over 90% reliability is critical for consistent results. The importance of your spell DC cannot be overstated. It's the difference between being entirely ineffective and completely overpowering an enemy group. The impact is immense. In Act 1, achieving a high DC is quite challenging, even when fully optimizing your caster, such as having a main stat of 20 through the Hex Hair and ability feats for a +5 bonus, and equipping items like Melf's First Staff, the Protective Sparks Wars Robe, and the Spell Shade Circlet for an additional +3 bonus at level 5, you reach a maximum DC of 19. Under less optimal conditions, your DC might be around 17. Even at DC 19, high will save enemies will still resist your spells about 25% to 35% of the time, whereas low will save enemies might be affected approximately 85% of the time or more. Therefore, even when fully specializing a character and spell DC early on, results can feel inconsistent. Act 1 represents the weakest point for control spells. You lack sufficient spell slots, your concentration saves aren't yet robust, and you likely don't have enough items or feats to reliably win initiative and shut down enemies before they act. In Act 2, control spells receive a significant boost. More powerful items become available, including those featuring the Arcane Acuity perk. These items include the Gloves of Battle Mage's Power, Head of Fire Acuity, Head of Storm Science Power, and Helm of Arcane Acuity. All these items function similarly. They build Arcane Acuity stacks, typically granting +2 stacks per trigger event. These stacks directly add to your spell DC, significantly enhancing your control spell's effectiveness. However, these items don't provide immediate benefits. You must actively build your strategy around their triggers to maximize their impact. For instance, the Helm of Arcane Acuity grants stacks upon physical hits, making it ideal for a sword bard who can perform multiple ranged attacks before casting. Alternatively, the Head of Fire Acuity stacks from fire damage, perfect for a sorcerer who uses a quickened Scorching Ray before casting crowd control spells to drastically boost DC. By Act 3, additional items become available, finally allowing you to achieve the powerful crowd control potential you have sought. However, getting there requires patience. At lower levels, it's a good idea to have some spells that don't rely entirely on saving throws like Grease or Darkness to ensure more reliable effects and provide protection. There are some subclasses that can significantly boost your chances of success when casting control spells. Divination wizards gain the Portent feature, which provides pre-rolled dice that can replace an enemy's roll. This effectively grants you full control over whether an enemy succeeds or fails on a saving throw. Enchantment wizards gain the Split Enchantment feature at level 10, which allows them to cast any single target enchantment spell on 2 targets simultaneously, effectively replicating the Sorcerer's twin spell meta magic. Unlike the Sorcerer's version, this feature can be used every turn without any restrictions. Lawbards can use Cutting Words to subtract 1d6 from an enemy saving throw. The key advantage here is that you can decide to use it after seeing the enemy's initial roll, making it highly adaptable. Sorcerers have access to the Hasten spell meta magic, which grants disadvantage on the first saving throw against the spell. Additionally, sorcerers can learn both the Extend spell and Twin spell meta magics. While you cannot use Extend or Twin simultaneously with Hasten, they each offer unique advantages. Extend spell is particularly particularly useful increasing the duration of spells like Hypnotic Pattern that do not rely on recurring saves. Twin spells, on the other hand, is excellent for targeting multiple enemies with single target spells, greatly enhancing the spell's reach and impact. And last but not least, they gain access to this Quicken spell meta magic, which allow them to cast a spell as a bonus action. And as a side note, the Band of Mystic Scoundrel allows you to cast an enchantment or an illusion spell as a bonus action as well, if you hit the enemy with a physical attack before. While these abilities are extremely powerful, they come with limitations that reduce their overall effectiveness for a control-focused caster. Heightened spell applies to all affected targets, making it a strong option even for area controls. However, none of these abilities help with recurring saves, meaning spells that require multiple saves are still risky. Long story short, these subclass features offer a helpful safety net for your high spell save DCs, but they can't guarantee your control spells will land on their own. You still need to build around a 95% success rate to be truly reliable. Let's take a quick look at how these subclass features interact with the 3 spells we are highlighting in this spotlight. Holdperson requires enemies to save each turn to break free. While the maximum duration is 10 turns, it's unlikely to last that long against multiple enemies. Even with a 90% failure rate on saves, statistically 1 out of 3 enemies will break free in 3 turns, while at 95% chance it's only 1 of 3 enemies in 6 turns, therefore it's far from guaranteed. Portent Dice, Cutting Words and Heightened Spell can all increase your chances for the initial save, making Holdperson most effective when used against on a single nearby enemy to set up critical damage. Due to a high damage potential for critical hits, the spell doesn't need to last long to be impactful. In these single target burst scenarios, all of these options provide substantial benefits. Hypnotic Pattern is the most user-friendly of the 3. It has a very large area of effect. Once enemies fail the initial save, they are incapacitated for 2 turns without needing to make additional saves. Its massive area means that even if you fail to control 1 or 2 targets, abilities like Portent Dice or Cutting Words can help mitigate the failure by ensuring at least 1 more target is affected. However, Heightened Spell's disadvantage on the saving throw is particularly effective here, as it applies to all targets simultaneously. Since Hypnotic Pattern doesn't require recurring saves, Heightened Spell will consistently have its full impact, making it an ideal choice for sorcerers. Confusion is the most complex of the 3 spells. It affects a group but requires 2 failed saves to initially take effect, 1 on casting and 1 before the target's first action. After that, it requires an additional save every turn to maintain the confused state. Due to its recurring saves and group-focused nature, Confusion is inherently less compatible with the previously mentioned subclass abilities. Its effectiveness heavily relies on maximizing your spell save DC, making it more viable in the later acts when your build is fully optimized. Spells like Holdperson, which enable devastating coordinated attacks, are most effective when your team can act in sync, allowing your controller to cast their control spells just before your allies follow up with their attacks. In contrast, spells like Confusion depend on your controller casting them before enemies have a chance to close the distance. That's why aligning initiative values across your party is such a highly effective strategy when running control-focused setups. And beyond that, having a high initiative in general is essential for every control-focused tactic. After all, you don't have that much control over the battlefield if the enemies get to do whatever they want before you'd even had a chance to raise your stuff, do you? Almost all powerful control spells require concentration. Enemies are aware of who is concentrating on what and will actively try to break it. They will use any prone causing effects which automatically disrupt concentration and throw objects like rocks to cancel your spells. Protecting your concentration is crucial but challenging, as choosing the Warcaster feat and Constitution proficiency competes with the need for stat boost and the Alert feat to increase your control reliability. To maintain concentration, position yourself carefully, stay within range but out of sight, hide behind a corner after casting or take cover within a darkness cloud from an ally. Consider taking 1 level of Sorcerer as a starting class to gain Constitution proficiency or have your classic cast Sanctuary on you for added protection. Regardless of the method, safeguarding concentration is essential. Otherwise, you may find your control spells disrupted before they have any real impact. Of course, if you manage to crowd control the entire enemy group at once, that works too. Luring enemies into a single spot before engaging can significantly amplify the effectiveness of control spells. Techniques like using Minor Illusion or Druid's Cat Shape can be surprisingly effective at clustering enemies. Just as offensive area spells like Fireball benefit from tight enemy grouping, spells like Hypnotic Pattern, Fear or Confusion become substantially more powerful when all enemies are bunched together. One common saying you may encounter is, death is the best form of crowd control. Whether this holds true largely depends on your party composition and the type of encounter. If you can eliminate an enemy in one shot, there is little point in controlling it. Similarly, if your party can wipe out an entire group of enemies in a single turn, spending resources on CC becomes unnecessary. All of this depends heavily on your team composition, your preferred playstyle, and the specific enemies you are facing. When your control spells are reliable, targeting the right enemies with crowd control can decisively shape the battle in your favor. In general, crowd control is a defensive strategy. It's especially valuable when your team can't consistently eliminate threats or mitigate incoming damage. The more dangerous the enemy's damage potential, the more impactful effective control becomes. On the flip side, if your team can easily wipe out groups of enemies with area damage, control loses some of its value. So choose your approach carefully. There are several additional control spells that, while not always the first choice, are worth considering as situational tools to complement your primary arsenal. Sleep is a no-save spell that puts enemies to sleep for 2 turns, but it only works if the enemy's HP is below a specific threshold. It functions as a pseudo-finisher, temporarily disabling a weakened enemy while allowing a single automatic critical hit from melee, effectively sealing their fate. Sleeping is especially useful when there's annoyingly low HP enemy still standing that you can't quite finish off. Plus, it doesn't consume your concentration, making it a handy utility spell. Command is a level 1 spell that excels at providing quick, on-demand control for 1 turn. You can command an enemy to fall prone, drop their weapon, flee or approach you, all without requiring concentration. This versatility makes it an incredibly useful tool to have at your disposal. Tasha's Hideous Larva is a level 1 spell that requires concentration and can incapacitate a single enemy for up to 10 turns, but it comes with a drawback. It prompts a saving throw every turn and also when the target takes damage. While it's cheap to cast in terms of spell slots, the need to maintain concentration often makes it less effective compared to higher level spells. Crown of Madness is a level 2 concentration spell that targets a single humanoid enemy, forcing them to attack the nearest creature for 3 turns. It's especially effective as an opener when there is still distance between you and the enemy. Because the affected target is seen as hostile by its allies, casting this spell from stealth or before your team engages will cause the entire enemy group to focus down their own maddened ally. The spell pairs especially well with Twin Spell, allowing you to turn 2 enemies against their own team at once. Ideally, you want to cast it on durable melee bruisers, since they will survive long enough to take a beating from their own side and return the favor. The Blindness spell inflicts, blindness on 1 or more targets when upcast, with enemies having a chance to save every turn. Early in the game, it's unreliable due to frequent saves and the availability of other spells that cause blindness, like Darkness, Fog Cloud or Hunger of Hader. However, since blindness doesn't require concentration, it remains useful when your concentration is already occupied. Notably, upcasted blindness can be cast repeatedly on the same enemy, making it effective for overcoming legendary resistances. Glyph of Warding is essentially a budget version of Hypnotic Pattern. This spell has a small radius and incapacitates enemy for 2 turns or until they take damage. It's useful because it can be cast while concentrating on another spell, and it grants melee attackers at least 1 automatic crit before the enemy wakes up. As it doesn't require concentration, it serves as a reliable backup if Hypnotic Pattern is already in use. Fear is a potential alternative to Holdperson. It has a small area of effect and only works at close range, making positioning crucial. When successful, enemies will flee for 2 turns, dropping their weapons as they go. They only make recurring saves if they can no longer see you. Fear becomes particularly effective when combined with spells like Spike Growth. Slow can hit multiple spread out targets and last up to 10 rounds, but it requires recurring saves. While it doesn't completely disable enemies similar to Confusion, it significantly reduces their damage potential. Slow works exceptionally well with difficult terrain spells as the combined effect almost completely halts enemy movement. Polymorph is essentially a single target variant of Hypnotic pattern. Polymorph transforms an enemy for 5 turns, or 10 if extended, without requiring recurring saves. Use it when you need to neutralize a single target for a prolonged period, allowing you to deal with other threats first. Dominate Person is a level 5 spell that allows you to control a single humanoid enemy. It triggers a saving throw each time the dominated target takes damage. While it can last up to 10 turns, its effectiveness is situational. Despite being somewhat costly for its level, the ability to turn a strong enemy against their allies remains impactful. Hold Monster is an upgraded version of Hold Person without the humanoid restriction. Despite its cost, it's a powerful tool when cast on the right target. Eyebite is a level 6 spell that allows you to cast Sleep, Feel or Sicken on a target every turn. The Sleep effect grants automatic critical hits in melee but also wakes the target when hit. Flesh to Stone is primarily used outside of combat, as the first cast is not considered hostile. This level 6 spell requires the enemy to fail 3 consecutive saving throws to be petrified. If the enemy fails all 3 saves, they will turn to stone permanently. However, if they succeed on any of the saves, combat will be triggered. This allows you to either initiate a fight by trying to disable a single target, or disengage entirely before combat begins. This makes Flesh to Stone a unique and strategic option, either to take out one enemy at the start of a fight or to take an NPC out of the game without ever engaging in a battle. Otto's Irresistible Dance is a level 6 spell that disables an enemy for up to 10 turns while allowing you to continue attacking them without breaking the effect. There's no initial save, guaranteeing at least 1 turn of control, but subsequent turns require recurring saves. It's basically like Hold Monster without the auto crits, but with an auto success first save. While strong, it's far too costly for a single guaranteed turn of control. Let's summarize the core information here. Holdperson is a versatile hard hold spell that still allows you to attack the affected targets. Its primary limitation is a single target focus with 1 additional target per upcasted level. The recurring saves make it challenging to maintain it over a longer period. This spell excels when you need to deal heavy melee damage to nearby enemies by enabling automatic critical hits, or when targeting distant enemies that require a complete hold while remaining attackable. Alternatives for Hold Person are Feel, which can provide the same function by also allowing attacks on affected targets but without the automatic critical hits. Hold Monster is essentially an upgraded version of Hold Person with a broader target selection. It's more versatile but also higher level. Sleep and Command, where Sleep functions as a finishing move enabling automatic crits on weakened enemies, while Command provides a 1-turn disabling effect, making it flexible low-cost utility option. Tasha's Hideous Lava and Otto's Irresistible Dance, while Tasha's Lava is generally less effective compared to other options, and Otto's Irresistible Dance, while being powerful, is just too costly for its limited application. Eyebite stands out as a high-level option that allows you to switch between effects like Fear and Sleep each turn. This flexibility makes it particularly useful in prolonged encounters. Use Hold Person and its alternatives for taking out high-priority threats. Hypnotic pattern is the best all-around team disable spell. It doesn't require recurring saves and only costs a 3rd level spell slot, while also providing an area of effect comparable to an upcast confusion. The synergy with Haten's spell makes it exceptionally reliable for shutting down entire groups. Just be careful not to accidentally break the spell with area damage. Alternatives for Hypnotic pattern are: Glyph of Warding Sleep is a great backup option since it doesn't require concentration, functioning similarly to Hypnotic pattern but with a smaller radius. Polymorph and Flesh to Stone. Polymorph is the single target equivalent of Hypnotic pattern, while Flesh to Stone serves as a situational non-combat alternative. Use Hypnotic pattern and its alternatives to gain the action economy advantage on a battlefield, splitting one big fight into smaller digestible chunks, or as an emergency tool in dire situations. Confusion is a spell that requires significant investment in spell save DC and careful planning to use effectively. Its ideal use case is as an opener against tightly grouped enemies, especially when the number of targets is more than double what Hold Person could affect. Spells like Minor Illusion can help stack enemies before combat begins, setting up a strong alpha strike. Unlike hardlock spells, Confusion doesn't completely shut down enemies, but it can still dramatically shift the momentum of a fight. The Stupor effect alone offers a reliable turn denial, while Occasional Friendly Fire, though inconsistent, can provide bonus damage when it occurs. Similar in spirit to Confusion, Slow disrupts enemy actions rather than fully locking them down. It's especially effective against melee enemies and stacks well with difficult terrain to limit mobility and damage output. Crown of Madness is a lower level control spell that performs best at long range opener. Unlike Confusion, it can perform well against small groups of enemies. Crown of Madness offers more predictable friendly fire. Dominate Person and Planar Binding are high-level single-target control spells that can flip the tide of battle when used on powerful enemies. Their success relies heavily on a strong spell save DC and are best reserved for key threats. These spells are most effective when used to initiate combat, but Confusion is uniquely suited for large-scale swarm-like encounters, while others like Crown of Madness or Dominate Person shine in smaller, more focused skirmishes. Its turn denial potential can significantly reduce incoming pressure from the very first round. Though less predictable than hard control spells, it offers a chance to not only disable enemies, but also, depending on the current mood of the AI, turn them against one another. Ultimately, choosing the right control spell depends on your party setup, enemy types, and how you like to approach encounters. Whether you prefer locking down priority targets, splitting up enemy groups, or causing chaotic infighting, mastering these spells will give you the edge in any battle. So get creative, experiment, and let me know your favorite combos in the comments. If you enjoyed this in-depth guide and analysis of game mechanics, please like and subscribe for more build crafting content and have fun experimenting with your builds and setups.